Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content that I'm making, please click that subscribe button. Also remember to click that bell button and make sure to tick that box to send all notifications so you don't miss out on any videos. With that in mind, let's get on with the video. What's up guys, welcome to Munchkins Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Munchkins logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. And welcome to my Should You Pull video on Rosa'S Lost Chapter. In this banner, you do have the chance to grab Rosa'S EX 15 and 35 CP weapon alongside with Sabin's EX 15 and his 35 CP weapon as well as the third wheel for Yuri having his 15 and 35 CP weapon. Now in this video we're going to be concentrating obviously on the 2 EX weapon and their EX plus as well as their reworks. So without further ado, let's start this video. Now we'll start this video off with a returning EX, which is Rosa'S EX weapon called the Elven Bow. This gives you the EX ability called Luminous Arrow, which is a 4-hit AoE range brave attack plus a single target HP attack. This moderately increases its brave damage dealt when you're targeting a single target. The stolen brave can overflow up to 120% of her max brave and raises the ally's brave based on the HP damage dealt. This does not consume ability use on the next turn as well. This has a slightly slow recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 limit break this raises the overall brave damage. At 2 out of 3 it slightly raises the max brave overflow limit of the stolen brave, and at 3 out of 3 this slightly raises the recast speed of Luminous Arrow. Now let's take a look at the plus version. Of course, this improves the EX ability of Luminous Arrow at 0 out of 3 limit break. When you're using Luminous Arrow, it now slightly raises the max brave overflow limit again and moderately restores the party's HP based on the HP damage dealt, which can go up to 20% of their max HP. Now while Rosa'S Prayer is active, this turns her HP attack and her HP attack plus into the plus version. This is basically still a range brave plus HP attack and will raise the party's brave based on the HP damage dealt. At 1 out of 3 limit break, when you're using a Luminous Arrow, you will now be granted the Miraculous Light buff for 4 turns. Now Miraculous Light has the following effects. This raises the max brave overflow limit of the entire party and grants a brave regen to the party as well. Doesn't stack with the same buff, and at 2 out of 3 limit break it moderately raises Rosa'S max brave and her attack, and when the quest starts she will have Rosa'S Prayer for 10 turns active already. At 3 out of 3 limit break, when you're using Luminous Arrow, this will increase the total brave potency and will now deal a 50% splash damage to non-targets. Now the bonus sphere you're going to be getting here, if you do decide to max it, is called Break Hit HP Regen. Along with it, basically when breaking a target or attacking a broken target, this restores the party's HP at 3% of their max HP per turns for 6 turns. Okay, so now let's take a look at Rosa'S rework, which is just slight tweaks to her abilities. Let's start off with Divine Blast Extend. Now the two things that I noticed that made a difference with her Divine Blast ability is basically increasing the total brave potency of Divine Blast and giving itself a max brave overflow limit up to 120%, which it didn't have before. However, the rest sort of stays the same. And now let's take a look at Pray Extend. Now when you're using Pray, this moderately raises the brave gain based on the attack. It slightly improves the effects of Rosa'S Prayer, which is something we've had before. However, it now changes its activation condition to when the HP is above 80% or below 50% of their max HP. Now this also extends the duration of Erase by 5 turns and adds an HP regen effect, which is quite new. It has a low action delay, which is not new, and the HP attack plus I do believe is not new as well. Okay, so let's talk about how much you should be investing on Rosa if you do decide to EX plus her weapon. Now, in my opinion, you should start off at 2 out of 3 limit break, and the reason why is this is when Rosa will actually get her Rosa'S prayer buff at the start of the quest, and it actually lasts for 10 turns. Not to mention, you do get the HP attack plus already at 0 out of 3, and at 1 out of 3 you will be getting the miraculous light buff as well. So at 2 out of 3 is, I think, where you should start off with Rosa. And you know my deal with minimum limit breaks. If you went 2 out of 3, you might as well go 3 out of 3 for the max limit break. So while 3 out of 3 isn't overly necessary, she does add a 50% splash damage to her arsenal in terms of her EX ability. A lot of the reasons why you wouldn't really go 3 out of 3 is Rosa doesn't actually get more DPS damage out of it, or at least HP attack damage. So while a lot of the EX plus they'll get extra brave plus HP attack, Rosa's EX plus doesn't actually get that. It only gets the 50% splash damage, so it's great for those circumstances where you have to fight 2 bosses at the last wave. However, if there is only a single target boss, you're actually not taking advantage of what Rosa really brings. So I do understand if you do not go 3 out of 3, because it's not a big deal if you don't go that far for her. It's really going to be up to you whether you think that 50% splash damage is worth investing your ingot. Alright, so now let's take a look at Sabin's EX weapon, which is going to be the first time we're going to be getting here in the global version of the game. It is called Venom Claw and gives you the EX ability called Phantom Rush, which is a Wind and Holy 4-hit Wind and Holy Magic Brave attack plus HP attack executed twice. It inflicts the Wind and Holy resistance down for 4 turns after the first HP attack and grants 1 stack of Powers Unleashed, which has a max of 4 stacks, and inherited techniques for 8 turns. Now when Powers Unleashed is at 3 stacks or higher, this turns into Phantom Rush Plus, which basically just ignores the target's defense. Inherited Techniques has the following effects. It raises his attack, max and max brave overflow limit, and grants a Wind and Holy enchant effect on Sabin. This has a slow recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 limit break, this just increases the brave damage of Phantom Rush. At 2 out of 3 increases its recast speed, and at 3 out of 3 will give Sabin an access to his HP attack plus, which is a Wind and Holy Magic Brave attack plus HP attack. This increases the existing Powers Unleash stack by 1. Now let's take a look at the plus version of his weapon. Of course, this improves the EX ability Phantom Rush. At 0 out of 3 limit break, the Stolen Brave can overflow up to 120% of his max brave now, and the plus version will be getting a 150% max brave overflow limit. At 1 out of 3 limit break, he will start off with his Inherited Techniques buff for 8 turns. At 2 out of 3, it will slightly raise his max brave and his attack, and when Powers Unleash is active, it will turn his HP attack plus now to the plus variant, increasing the number of brave hits to 2 and slightly raising the total brave potency, and the Stolen Brave can overflow up to 120% of his max brave now. And at 3 out of 3, when using Phantom Rush or Phantom Rush Plus, it will now deal a 5-hit Wind and Holy Magic Brave plus HP attack executed 3 times instead of the initial attack, and tremendously raising the total brave potency of this ability. The bonus sphere that you're going to be getting here is Critical Boost Long, which is when dealing a critical hit, raising the max brave to 10% by 10% for 6 turns. Okay, so now let's take a look at Sabin's rework, which is actually quite a big rework in terms of his abilities. Let's start off with Aura Cannon Extend, Now when using Aura Cannon, this increases the number of brave hits to 4. It tremendously increases the total brave potency. The stolen brave can now overflow up to 120% and deals 50% splash damage to non-targets, and will also inflict the wind and holy resistance down to all enemies for 4 turns. This grants 1 stack of Powers Unleash for 8 turns instead of the initial 4 turns attack up. So this is one of the biggest things that has changed. He now has a stacking buff called Powers Unleash, which I mentioned during the EX as well. Now when Powers Unleash is at 3 stacks or higher, this will turn Aura Cannon into this plus variant. It will now ignore the target's defenses, and the Stolen Brave can overflow up to 180% of his max Brave and converts 50% of the HP damage dealt to Brave. This does not grant any more Powers Unleash stacks, and it decreases the Powers Unleash stacks by 2 after use. Now when using the Powers Unleash is active, while Powers Unleash is active, this will turn his Brave attack to its plus variant, and it becomes a match Brave attack, increasing the Brave hits to 2 and greatly raising the total Brave potency and the Brave damage dealt to Ghost type enemies. It also increases the existing Powers Unleash stacks by 1. Now Powers Unleash basically raises his max Brave and his attack. Now let's take a look at the Razor Gale Extend, because this has been changed as well. Now the number of Brave hits increased to 4, greatly raising the total Brave potency and moderately raising the Brave damage dealt to a single target. The Stolen Brave can overflow up to 150% of his max Brave and inflicts the Wind and Holy Resist down to all enemies for 4 turns, and slightly improves the max Brave up and extends its duration by 4. And grants 1 stack of Powers Unleashed for 8 turns. This triggers an AoE HP attack after use, and the HP damage dealt is split amongst all enemies. Now when Powers Unleashed is at 3 stacks, again this will give you access to the plus variant of Razor Gale, which again ignores defense. The Stolen Brave can overflow up to 200% of his max Brave, and also delays the target by 1 turn, does not grant any Powers Unleashed stacks, and it will decrease the Powers Unleashed stack by 2. Okay guys, so how much should you be investing on Sabin's EX Plus if you do decide to plus his weapon? Now I do believe you should start off at 2 out of 3 limit break for this one. The only main reason is you do get access to the plus variant of his HP attack, which is great for longevity. However, if you do start at 1 out of 3 limit break, it's not that bad, because this is when he starts off with his inherited techniques. Now, of course, if Sabin is your favorite character, I do highly suggest going 3 out of 3 with him, because now instead of a 4-hit Wind and Holy Magic Brave attack plus HP attack, it's now a 5-hit Wind and Holy Magic Brave attack, and instead of hitting it twice, it now hits 3 times. So if you really think about it, if your Sabin is actually really good and it's hitting like over like 99999 damage all the time, it's basically an extra almost 50k HP that you're shaving off on the enemy. So having that extra investment on that EX Plus is actually not that bad in terms of comparing it to Rosa, which is, I know, a unfair comparison. However, they are both in this banner, so I just like to compare that a little bit. So I honestly think going 3 out of 3 is not too bad of an investment for Sabin. Now, one last thing before we move on, just to remind you guys that Sabin is relying on 2 elements, which is Wind and Holy elements. And this can be a good thing and a bad thing depending on the fight. If obviously the bosses are resistant to this, just to let you know, Sabin won't be effective on some fights. And of course, the opposite can also happen, where he will be really good because he takes advantage of those elemental type weaknesses. So just something to really think about before you really invest on Sabin. Okay guys, so we're finally at the end of this video, and of course I'll give you some reasons why you should and why you should not be pulling for this banner. And the first one on why you should be pulling is you need another healer or melee DPS. Now honestly, I'm gonna lean more towards that you actually need a healer slash support character when you're pulling for this particular banner rather than a DPS, because honestly, there's a lot of DPSs out there. So if you're pulling for this banner, I'm gonna lean more towards that you actually need a support character, okay? So, but if you do need a melee DPS, Samin is actually really good. He's not game-breaking good, but he is quite good. Think of it as like Tifa. You do get extra more damage and stuff like that with the rework. So, yeah. Honestly, the second reason is going to be, yeah, you do need more characters for Dimensions End, and honestly, Rosa is really going to help you out, especially with her re-raise ability. She is the only second character other than Y'shtola that can actually revive characters, and actually her raise is not going to be affecting your score as well, whereas Y'shtola does affect your score. And the final reason here is basically you are a big fan of these characters, and of course you're going to be pulling for them. Okay, so now let's take a look at why you should not be pulling for this banner. And the first one is going to be, if you don't need a healer slash support or a melee DPS, you can go ahead and skip on this banner. Like I mentioned earlier, the more reason that you are pulling for this is because of Rosa. She is a great, again, just repeating myself here, a great healer that can revive. However, if you are happy with just Y'shtola as your reviver, then by all means you can skip this. There are obviously other great healers out there like Rem, and of course Porum, just going on top of my head out there. Now Porum doesn't obviously have her EX plus just yet, but she is still pretty good in doing that. And of course Yuna just got her EX plus as well, and she can take off debuffs and such and all that. So there's other options out there definitely. So if you are happy with what you have, you don't need to pull. The next reason why you should not be pulling for this is you're just saving your resources for the Emperor. And now I'm going to add the next global character, the global first character that's coming out next month. So if you want to save up your gems a little bit more, then this is the reason why you should not be pulling for this particular banner. And of course the last one is you're just not a big fan of these characters altogether, so you can just go ahead and skip on this one. Anyway guys, I think I'll leave the video right here. Please remember to click like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hitting that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed is going to help my channel to grow. And of course, hitting that like button is going to help with the YouTube algorithm, making sure this video goes out to other people. Now leave down in the comments below if you are pulling for this banner. Let me know if it's for Rosa or for Savin or for both. Make sure to follow me on my social media. I am on Twitter and on Facebook at Munchkins Gaming. This is Munchkins logging off, and I'll see you guys in the next level.